So welcome everybody to Kaju Samyuzang Edinburgh, in the room or online, somewhere in the world. So we're going to be continuing with the legacy of hopefully living the legacy of our teacher Akong Tulku Rinpoche, with the teachings that have been compiled in this book, Restoring the Balance, which, of course you can also buy the book. But it's good to go through it, and because I had the good fortune to work on a daily basis with Rinpoche, I got to know him fairly well, and so if I can be of any help to sort of unpick, not that it was complicated what he was saying, it was, if anything, so simple that you might miss it. So he doesn't use, obfuscating long words and things like that. It's very simple, and I think for that reason sometimes it just passes by and you don't necessarily catch it. But before that, let's say the prayers. So we're going to be saying first of all the prayers to the root Lama, and then the lineage prayer. So Akong Rinpoche is my root Lama, but whoever your root Lama is, you think of that person. If you don't have a root Lama, you can just think of the Buddha, or you could think of whoever you most spiritually revere. O glorious, precious root Lama, above my head on a lotus moon seat, you care for me with great kindness. Please bestow the cities of body, speech, and mind. Great Vajradhara Chilunaro Marpamila Dharma Lord Gampopa, knower of the 3 times, omniscient Karmapa, holders of the 4 elder and 8 younger lineages, Drikunchaklung and the Salpa, glorious Drukpa, and so forth, masters of the profound path of Mahamudra, to the dark Po instruction lineage, the peerless protectors of wanderers. Kaju Lamas, I supplicate you, I uphold your lineage. Grant the blessings of your liberating lives. Just as revulsion is taught to be the legs of meditation, this meditator clings not to food and riches, and has severed the ties to worldly life. Grant your blessings for detachment from honor and gain. Just as devotion is taught to be the head of meditation, this meditator constantly prays to the Lama, who opens the vault of pith instructions. Grant your blessings for uncontrived devotion to wealth force. Just as non-distraction is taught to be the body of meditation, this meditator simply remains without altering the fresh essence of whatever thought arises. Grant your blessings for parting from the concept of meditation. Just as thought is taught to be in essence Dharmakaya, for this meditator unhindered manifestation dawns. Nothing whatsoever dawning, as whatever may appear. Grant your blessings to realize inseparable samsara nirvana. May I never in future lives part from authentic lamas, and embracing ever the glory of Dharma. May I perfect the qualities of the levels and paths, and thus swiftly attain the state of Vajradhara. So, restoring the balance. This is like a handbook for living in the 21st century. I mean, it was from the 20th century, but in modern day, let's say. Of course, a lot of things have happened since Rinpoche gave these teachings, and then he died. How many years ago is it now? Is it 12 years ago? Yeah. But his mind, his teachings, do not die, especially if we use them. So we're going to, this is actually now the third session in this series with the subheading, Free to be who we are. So what does that actually mean, free to be who we are? I mean, from a Buddhist point of view, who we are, potentially, is Buddha, because all beings have Buddha nature. So that, if we reach our full potential, is who we are. Same as Buddha. So, but let's not get too ambitious. We can't, I don't think at the end of this teaching you're going to go out there and, oh, that's it, I'm Buddha. It's not quite like that. It's a long haul. It took the Buddha many lifetimes to become fully awakened. But we know we're on the right track if we follow the Buddha's teachings, which is either directly through the Buddha's teachings or through other enlightened masters, such as Akong Rinpoche. And what I think is one of the most valuable things about Rinpoche is that he was very, very familiar with the Westerners. He lived in the West a lot of his life. He was only in his early 20s when he had to leave Tibet. So he spent much of his life here, and he got to know Western people and the way they think and the way they are and the conditions here. And he lived in that way for a long time. So you could say it's awakening our limitless potential. Let's not get too ambitious. If we just say awakening our limitless potential. The word Buddha means the awakened one. Because, it's kind of like we're half asleep, we're not fully awake. So what does it mean to be truly free? Free to be who we are. Why aren't we free? Are we free or are we not free? And if not, why not? So let's have a look. I'll begin with this one called Awakening Our Limitless Potential. So Rinpoche says, as human beings, we have lost the freedom simply to be. I mean, right there, it's very descriptive of modern life, no? We're very, very rarely simply being. You could say we're more simply doing. We're always doing, aren't we? Which really, in effect, if we had an accurate description of the state of how we are now, it would be more as human doings rather than as human beings. I think human beings is slightly a misnomer these days. It shouldn't be, but it is, because most of the time we're busy, busy, busy. So right there in that first sentence is already a lot to think about and reflect on. We exist by statistics, labels, paper identity, passports, driving licenses, birth certificate, death certificate, what's your credit card number, what's your tax number. Without a birth certificate, it's as if we're not alive. If we have a birth certificate, we also then have to have a death certificate at the end. so it's full of paperwork and stuff that in computers. And even without a death certificate, even though we're dead, we still exist in some form. We know that we will still get letters and things like that. If we haven't got a death certificate, the council will still send you bills probably and things, many forms of sort of existence. And that is why our lives may be called like shadow lives. And that's how things are in our society at present. Now, this was probably taught about 20 years ago. How much has happened since then? This is before a lot of technology that we have now, certainly before AI. All our details, everything like that is in the cloud in the sky, the iCloud or whatever. People, especially young people, look for freedom beyond this bureaucracy. I want to be free, I want to achieve freedom. But the methods they use are often the contradiction of freedom. For example, when you're a teenager, you want to break free from your parents, so you rent a flat. But that doesn't give you freedom. In fact, it's the opposite, because now you have to find money to rent the flat, to pay all the bills. You want to be free from people, so you buy a dog. This is so true, isn't it? Especially since COVID, everyone's got dogs. I feel quite weird when I go for a walk because I haven't got a dog with me. It's like a must-have accessory almost. And cats, of course. Not that I don't like cats and dogs, I do. So you buy a dog, and then now you can't be out for more than a few hours, not to mention a holiday, because you've got a dog. So what happened to your freedom? If you really want freedom, go to the street and sleep there. Be homeless. Now you're really free. You don't have a home to worry about. You don't have bills to pay. Or who's going to pay. You don't need a car because you're free to walk. There's no maintenance. Enjoying freedom, you can go around and do what you want. Everyday experience becomes your therapy. There's no need to go anywhere. But maybe this is too extreme for most of us. What he says is true, but it's slightly tongue-in-cheek because he's not advising us really to do that, but he's saying if you really want to be free, that's what you could do. Great meditators, the yogis, when they are developing real understanding of meditation, of wanting to be genuine and no longer conditioned, quite often become what other people would consider to be mad. Yeah, because it's so out of the normal way of being. But we're not great yogis, so don't recommend that just yet. But in society, every human is brainwashed to behave in society's way, isn't it? We have to observe certain rules, and there's a lot of conditions and very little freedom. In former times, when people woke up, they didn't need to get up by what time it was, when the alarm clock went up or the watch. They listened to the body's reactions. They would eat when they were hungry, rather than by the time shown on the clock. Hunger has to do with feelings, isn't it? What your body's telling you to do. Well, it should be, but it isn't. We do everything by the clock. Hunger has to do with feelings, not watches. If they were happy somewhere, he's talking about people from the past, they would stay rather than leave by a certain prearranged time. Friendship is more important than the clock. Freedom in human existence is not about fitting life into tidy time slots and comfortable houses. Keep it simple. So, as I was saying before, this has actually got more like that since the progress of technology. Because the more we rely on it, the less we are capable. And I'm not saying we shouldn't have it. I'm not a total Luddite. This is me talking, I'm not Rinpoche, but I do see the pitfalls of relying too much on it and attributing a power to it that it doesn't have. We cede our own power to the machines. So instead of the machines, well, it's kind of like we've done a swap. The machines, the technology becomes more like humans, but the humans become more like machines. That's the trade-off, and it's not a good one, you know. Also, you've got to think about who profits from this. I mean, there's about 5 people in the world, isn't it? The millionaires, the billionaires, the tech billionaires, they make lots of money out of this. Anyway, I'm not saying don't use technology, but just be aware of the pitfalls and what's useful about it and what isn't. Because one of the things that is built into it is addictive algorithms. This is common knowledge, it's open knowledge. So it's meant to be addictive, or it's not, they don't advertise it as being addictive. So how do you get into it in the first place? Because they offer you something convenient, something that's useful. So, oh, this is good, this is easy, this means I can do this, I can keep in touch with so-and-so, and da-da-da. And so we enroll to it, we subscribe to it, and then we get so used to it that we can't live without it. And we're just now starting to see people kind of rebelling a bit about this because they're seeing the bad effects it's having, especially on young people who have been brought up with it. They don't know anything other than this. You know, most of us sitting in this room were old enough to remember life before this. And so maybe we're not quite as addicted, but you know, it's very easy to just rely so much on something that you lose that power because you're not using your own brain in a good way. So it atrophies a bit, you know, or even a lot. I mean, and AI, that really does sort of rob us of our freedom. I read an article in Saturday's Guardian. It was actually a feature, but it's about this very thing, and it was about people's relationships with AI. And I'm talking about people that have got AI girlfriends. I suppose their boyfriends must exist as well, but it particularly mentioned the girlfriends. And it said that with AI, the society falls into sort of 3 groups. There's either the group that kind of see through it and don't engage that much with it, and are suspicious of it and wary of it, let's say. So that's one group. Then there's another group that do use it, but they know how it works, but they still use it. Why? Because in the case of having a girlfriend with AI, they are probably only ever programmed to say what you want them to say. So there's no arguments, there's no difference of opinion, they're just there to serve, basically. They're there to serve your every wish and need. Well, as much as they can do. Of course, it's not in real life, as it were, but people feel that, oh, well, that's made my life a whole lot easier. Now I don't have to please them. It's all about me. So I mean, you can see where this is going. It's like so harmful. But they are aware of it. How aware of it, I don't know. And then the third group, and also engage with AI, and are not even aware of the pitfalls of it. They're not aware, they're just totally sucked in. And so that there was instances of somebody treating their AI girlfriend a bit, not in a very nice way. And so then this other group would say, that's no way to treat your girlfriend, because they really bought into the reality of that person. So they're completely sucked into it. So all that's happened after Rinpoche's teachings. How much more it's sort of progressed. Yeah. So we should be really aware of this. Because that kind of technology robs us of our freedom. So if we want to be free, we have to be very, very aware of that. So we accept that is a situation in society. We don't have to go around, breaking up machines or smashing computers or anything like that. But we do need to be aware of it. Because we accept that's how it is in society, but we need to look beyond it if we're interested in awakening our true potential. In other words, of finding our own freedom We do not get freedom by relying on that and being totally sucked in by it. It's quite the opposite. We get enslaved by it. Yeah, because we rely on it, so then we're putty in the hands. So, the opposite, we need to awaken our inner potential despite whatever's going on outside, despite outside circumstances. So here he talks about computer technology. Gives instantaneous, so he's saying being free despite all the trappings. So as it existed then and even more so now. Computer technology gives us instantaneous access to personal data of any individual on a greater scale at all the time. If our identity is in the form of a number on a piece of paper, what is the difference between 100 plates and 100 people? Obviously, it's that human beings have feelings. They are unable to accept being designated as objects, such as plates. We may find it difficult to be treated as numbers, but often in modern society there's no alternative. It's just the way the system it works. I noticed this, I'm do some work at the university as chaplain, a Buddhist chaplain, and one of the things that students have sort of said to me about when they get a number, they get a number when they first enroll, and then that's who they are. They have this sort of number. I mean, I guess they do that in prison as well, isn't it? Just same. So we may find it difficult to be treated as numbers, but often in modern society there's no alternative. We have to accept the situation of living in a bureaucratic society. Our lives are ruled by clocks and the rigid structure of our society. Our technological luxuries and enjoyments have a negative and dark side, but we can't just go out and smash them all up, because the whole of our society is based on the interrelatedness of all the inventions and their consequences. So smashing up clocks or computers, for that matter, is not possible, nor is it the solution. Rather, it is for us to become free as human beings despite the trappings of modern society. We can't go around destroying it all, saying it's all bad, but we have to be aware of it, and then we can make progress by relying on ourselves and the people and things we respect, rather than giving all our power to the machines. We think we're getting their power, but we're giving our power. In Buddhism, we have the notion of being blessed to be born as a human being. A lot of the time we just think, oh, we're a human being. We take it for granted because that's all we know. We're human, lots of other humans. We also do a course called the Four Foundations, the Four Preliminary Foundations, which goes into this in detail. And the very first part of that is discussing and reflecting on precious human life, because we tend to take it for granted. We just think, okay, that's how we are. We don't see how much opportunity we have and what a treasure it is to have this and to use it well. So we call it precious human birth, and it means that we can awaken to our potential to be happy and beneficial in our society. It means we awaken our inner potential of mind that shines despite outer circumstances, whatever's going on in the world. We do not know when our outer circumstances may change or how they will change, so we train ourselves to develop our inner potential to be free, even when the situations are difficult or almost impossible. Not relying on the outer tech, in fact the opposite. So in other words, we really need to change the focus to look at what we have. We have our brain, our mind, The two are not quite the same. The brain is the machine that kind of translates the mind into outer activity and communication or whatever. But say our mind is limitless. That's really worth reflecting on, because that's not just a throwaway phrase. If something is limitless, it means there's no limit to it, isn't it? It means there's no point at which it stops. This book, we could say the limit of this book is that much, isn't it? And then beyond that, there's no book, because it's a physical thing. So anything physical, there's definitely a limit to it. This table that's the limit of the table. But the mind, you can't point to the mind and say, oh, my mind's this big, or maybe it's this big, or maybe it's only this big, because it's not a physical thing. There's no limit to it. We have this treasure. We are this treasure, actually, in a body. The body is limited because it's physical, isn't it? So why don't we get this right? What are the chains that hold us from flying? This is the next subtitles. The chains that hold us from flying. So we have choices. We have choices, and it's up to us to be aware of them and to choose what's going to be helpful to us. We can achieve the state of appreciating our human life. But first of all, we have to understand what that is. So we need to really look into it, not just take it for granted. I'm a human, I've always been human, there's other humans. There's lots to look into, believe me. And although we think there are a lot of humans, there are not that many when you compare it to other life forms. Think of how many insects there are in the world. You can't even begin to, you lift up a brick and you'll find thousands, tens of thousands of insects. So it's a lot of things are like that. Animals, there's tens of thousands, billions and billions of animals. And it's not to denigrate them in any way, because everything evolves. And we were maybe an animal at one point, or an insect at one point, who knows? But as humans, we have incredible potential. And it's up to us whether we use it or whether we give it away. Whether we waste it and rely on machines, or in any other way. So all the outer circumstances, talking about the chains that hold us from flying, all the outer circumstances that curtail our freedom don't have to make us feel helpless, because we do have choices. We're very lucky, as people that are in a country which is relatively free. Okay, we have these constraints that we can choose to use or not, but at least we're not living in a state where we have little choice, very little choice. We're pretty lucky, we're fortunate here. But everybody, if they develop their inner strength, has choice. First of all, we can achieve the state of appreciating our human life, because if we really appreciate it, then we'll use it well. Then we'll be less inclined to waste it. Because another thing that happens in modern society is that we get very used to being entertained by the corporate entertainment, by whatever's on telly, or on Netflix, or on this or on that, or whatever. And it's not saying that you shouldn't sometimes be entertained, but what happens is when you just get completely gaga in front of the TV night after night after night, then that is an incredible waste of your human potential, your mind, your limitless mind. It's focusing on something which isn't worth giving it the attention a lot of the time. I know, because I do that also, It's very addictive. Giving away, not appreciating what we have. So, how does this work? So the first thing we can do is to look at everything we want, everything we desire. And here, the secret is to know when enough is enough. So let's say we want to watch telly. You know, we come in, we're tired, we don't want to do any work, watch a bit of telly, but we choose something maybe that's interesting and we try and we watch that. In moderation, that's probably okay, but what happens is you get sucked in and then the next thing comes on, the next thing comes on, and then you just watch some pile of rubbish, you know. And of course the adverts come on because then that's not quite enough, there's not quite enough control over you, so we need to sell you some stuff in between the things as well. So that's how it works, isn't it? But we get so used to it that we don't see it like that. We just sit there, give me more, you know. But the more you understand about what's happening, the less tempting it is. Desires. So the secret is to know when enough is enough. Desires have no end if they are allowed to multiply. Because a desire, if it's allowed to multiply, will become a habit. I suppose one dose of heroin is not yet a habit. You've decided to have some heroin, you'll try it, and okay, so you tried it, and you're not addicted at that point, but if you keep trying it, you will definitely get addicted. But everything's like that. That's a very extreme, you know, maybe nobody here is on heroin, but that's how cigarettes start, isn't it? We start with one, or drinking, or whatever harmful stuff, you know, we'll just try it, and then you get sucked in. So they have no end if they're allowed to multiply. Each time we want something, or someone, this desire is like a chain that holds us down and prevents us from flying. Each time we cut the chain, we gain more freedom. So this true freedom lies within ourselves, within our own minds. We're not in prison, we don't have to break out of prison. The prison is what we've signed up to, you know? Because there's so much out there, and it's up to us how much we engage with it. And it's hard to be moderate, isn't it? When somebody's, for example, an alcoholic, if they want to give up, they have to give up all alcohol. They can't just have a little bit, because then it'll set them off on the habit again, because they've already got that neural pathway, to put it in those terms, you know, to be sucked into that. So if we want to be free, we have to check what's preventing that freedom. We're not in prison. And what prison we're in, maybe of our own making to some degree. Of course, if it wasn't out there, we couldn't involve ourselves with it. But and what is out there is not by people. It's not designed to. A lot of it is not designed to for our welfare. Let's put it like that. It's designed to make money out of us. Not everything, but a lot is. I mean, I'm not saying, you know, I've worked in the media. I mean, some of it is art and wonderful, and you know, for the good of us. But a lot of it isn't. It's just pure commercial stuff. And when you think of the leaders, some of the leaders who are in charge of the countries at the moment, you can see there's a lot of bad actors in the world who have great power, as if we subscribe. So each time we want something or someone, it's like it can prevent us from flying. So each time we cut the chain, we gain more freedom. True freedom lies within ourselves, within our own minds. And chains can be made out of anything. He says gold, iron, diamonds. It can look like a really lovely chain. You know, I'll have some more of that. What balancing, as in restoring the balance, or meditation means, is to undo the chains and to help us understand how we ourselves naively create these chains link by link. Nobody's forcing us to do it, but we do it through desire, through wanting. once we start to understand that the chains are from within us, we are able to start cutting free of the difficulties we have in daily life within ourselves. To achieve freedom in our mind is our aim, because that's where freedom or enchainment is. It's how we think, how we understand. That's what dictates how we're going to act, isn't it? So we need to really be aware. It's all about being really aware, sharpening your awareness, because otherwise, you get kind of in this drowsy kind of accepting kind of any old stuff that comes. It's like junk food for the brain. If all you know is junk food, then that's what you eat, isn't it? So we have to be a bit more choosy, not only about the food we eat, but what we put in our minds, what we put in through our brains, what kind of junk food is going in there, I think there's a word for this, isn't there? One of these, what is it, something slop? AI. Huh? Brain rot and something slop. That kind of thing. There is nothing apart from that. Searching for freedom in speech or through activity will never enable us to be completely free. We will still be chained. However, developing freedom in our mind will enable us to be free, even if our body is in jail. So somebody might put you in jail for whatever, a wrong reason, let's say. But if you're free in your mind, you have freedom. Actually, I know of instances of, in fact, there's a quite strong memory of a couple of Tibetan lamas that were imprisoned in Tibet, during the, there plenty still are. But I remember talking to one who came to Samye Ling, this is quite a long time ago, but he had spent a long time in prison, I think 20 years or something like that. But he had freedom in his mind, and not only that, but he was able to teach people in prison. He treated it, he said, like as if he was on retreat. Okay, he couldn't dictate anything about his outer circumstances, but where his mind was, he could. And so he treated it like a good opportunity to meditate. And he made great progress. And not only that, but he taught other people. And he found like little bits of paper that were just on the edge of, I don't know, like maybe it was, I can't remember what he said it was, but he found tiny pieces of paper from something, and he would write certain things for them and to keep, and then roll it up so the guards didn't find it or anything like that. And he spent many, many years like that, and really benefited himself and others, even despite he was in the worst circumstances you could imagine, where people were being tortured and stuff, him included. But he was free in his mind. So with that kind of freedom, we will be happy. This freedom comes from a deep understanding, and it's that we work towards. It's very often the opposite of what we think. So, for example, you might see your enemies, say you have some people that don't like you or whatever, you might see them as being infringing on your freedom. Whereas you'd see your friends as, oh, well, you can have a nice time with your friends, and they like you, you like them, have a nice time with them. But if you want to make the most of your precious human life, and say you want to spend some time really reflecting and meditating and using your time, well, who's going to steal your time more, your enemy or your friend? It's going to be the friends, isn't it? Because we like to spend time with our friends. And it's not saying that you shouldn't do that, but you should be aware of it. You should be aware of it. In moderation, fine. So it's about knowing when that, it's like with overeating, food's great, you can't exist without it. But overeating then becomes a problem. And it's like that with anything. What in itself is fine, can be nourishing. When it's too much, it becomes the opposite, it becomes harmful. Whereas at least with your enemy, you know where you are. You don't particularly want to spend extra time with your enemy. Not only that, but very often it's difficult circumstances that cause us to reflect. When everything's fine and we're with people that we like and we're just enjoying ourselves, then we just enjoy ourselves, and there's nothing wrong with that. But if you want to go deeper, when it's the difficult circumstances that we generally learn more from, isn't it? Like even when we're ill, illness can teach you, pain can teach you, difficult situations can teach you. They make you think. And then also you look at yourself, well, maybe I'm doing something not so good here. What's actually going on? And that's how we make progress. You don't have to search them out. You'll probably get your fair share. But to be aware of them and seeing it in a more kind of equanimity, with some more equanimity, and actually see how it can be a benefit at what seems to be a difficult situation, and how you can use it to progress. For example, let's say you're in the queue in the post office, and you might say, "Oh, come on already! There's these people that are taking forever, and why can't they get their money ready, or why can't they get their card?" And you get yourself angry because you're in a queue. Or you could take it as a chance to learn patience, to cultivate patience and compassion. Maybe that person in front, is not switched on, or maybe they have some physical disability, or whatever it can be. Give them a break. Give yourself a break. Patience is a really precious quality, and it's in very, very short supply. And I'm talking about myself as much as anyone else here. Because that's the habit, isn't it? You kind of like, I've got to be somewhere, I've got to do something. And you can be quite short with somebody because you're rushed to somewhere else. And yeah. So seeing both friends and enemies is helpful. Whoever or whatever we love the most is what doesn't allow us freedom of mind. Now, I need to make a caveat here, because he is not saying that you shouldn't love somebody or something. But what I would say you need to be aware of is grasping attachment. The love should be open and free, isn't it? Not, I only love you if you do that. And if you're like me and why didn't you do that? I did it for you. Why? It becomes then a contractual sort of bargaining thing, doesn't it? Love should be given freely, not with conditions attached. Well, that's different. That's business then, isn't it? It's more like business. So, whoever or whatever we love most is what doesn't allow us freedom of mind. If we cannot leave somebody or something without suffering the pain of separation, we could then see them as being like a prison warder. No matter what is happening, we're in a kind of jail. We lose total freedom when we fall in love with somebody. When we fall in love, we are willing to give everything away according to the demands of our love, even though it may cause harm to our family or make us lose our jobs. In modern society, a couple might eat and sleep and work together. If they're always crowding one another, it can be a kind of bondage. When one starts to look at someone else, or one of you starts to look or talk to someone else, the other partner gets jealous or upset. Is this freedom? Does a relationship like that not bring along with it all loss of freedom? Have you ever experienced, or are you experiencing a relationship like that? I know I have. I've not always been a nun, and people get jealous. Probably I've got jealous. It's not one of my worst things, but patience is harder for me. We have to be honest with ourselves. We have to own it, and then see how it's not helping us. Love should be given freely, shouldn't it? Not with conditions attached. No? I don't know. You're free to disagree. So that kind of a relationship where it's like bargaining, everybody loses their freedom. Friends who are needy give little freedom or maturity. They're like glue. We can't get away from it. If someone's very needy, I'm not talking about if somebody is in need, genuinely in need, and you need to help them, but just needy as in wanting more of your time, wanting more of your attention, just needy, but not in need, as it were. Then it's like we can't move away from them. A similar situation arises with children. I should say here that Rinpoche has 3 children. Well, they're not children anymore, they're all adults. He's got grandchildren. He's the most wonderful father and grandfather, but he's not a walkover. And he's also got a sense of humour. So he says, in life, the best jailer is a child who restricts our freedom for at least 18 years, depriving us of rest, sleep, wealth, and freedom of movement. I mean, you can't say it's not true. If you've ever had a child, and I have, of course there's more to say about it, but those things are also true. Depends on how you run your life. On the other hand, an enemy can stimulate us into breaking out of our habitual patterns so that we have no choice other than to grow up. Somebody difficult. I remember when I first went to live at Samye Ling, and I wasn't used to living in a group, a big group of people, and I found it difficult. I never had that, I'd lived with a person or with my family or whatever, but not a big. And I wasn't used to having to ask permission to do stuff and go to this committee or do that. And I remember asking Rinpoche, I said, and some people are very difficult, and maybe they think are the same as me. Probably do. And I asked him about it. I said, how do you get on with all these people? And he said, well, in the beginning, he said, if they're really difficult, and yeah, some people are, he said, then maybe just try to avoid them somewhat, don't try to sort of be in their company too much, when it's there, but don't get too involved. So that's in the beginning. In the middle, he said, then, you can start to learn to work with that situation, work with them, work how use it as in a way to reflect and progress, like that. And then he said, and in the end, he said, welcome them into your life because they are your teachers. I mean, it can be very funny as well, if you see the funny side of it, but you can also make great progress through difficult people and difficult situations and recognizing you to be one of them for somebody else. Yeah, definitely. On the other hand, an enemy can stimulate us into breaking out of our habitual patterns, so we've got no other choice than to grow up. If we consider correctly, we see that enemies can potentially be our best friends, because they are the ones who help us develop our potential and give us freedom, making us more mature. This doesn't mean to say we've got to go around looking for enemies or encourage enmity, nor do we have to antagonize our friends. Our friends can remain our friends, but we don't need to let them restrict our freedom. He's not saying, you shouldn't have friends or have a lover or a husband, wife, or whatever, but just to be aware not to get restricted by them. It's simply about being clear about the way things are. Clinging to friends and fighting enemies is an obstacle to our growth and a cause of suffering. Because what do? We spend our lives running towards one thing and running away from another and doing what we want. Don't do what you don't want. I want this, I don't want that. Such a lot of energy going after your desires and running away from what you don't want, rather than just dealing with whatever happens is in front of you and seeing the positive side of it. So everything becomes a cause for growth and freedom if you look at it in the right way, rather than as being as a restriction. It can actually be the key to your freedom, because freedom's from your mind, nowhere else. Freedom is in your mind. So he's saying, clinging to friends and fighting enemies is an obstacle to growth and a cause of suffering. And we'll never be really free if we're always at war with our world. So we need to accept how things are, but really be aware. On the other hand, using adverse circumstances to help us grow can benefit us and decrease our suffering. Such circumstances develop our patience and compassion. It's a matter of understanding, learning to have the awareness and intelligence to deal with difficult situations, transforming the negative into the positive. Because when you develop that patience, instead of just having your own wants, like that person's in my way, and it's preventing me from going where I want to go, or whatever, you develop that patience and that compassion, both of which are extremely good qualities, isn't it? Rather than just having your own desire and wants as the first thing that you've got to do this, and I need that, and I need that. You're open to others and the whole situation. And all of that can be, that's the opposite of junk food. That's food for your growth, that awareness. But if you're constantly blinded by your own wants, you never get that. And it's hard. It is hard because we are naturally have quite a bit of selfishness, but also we're encouraged to be selfish. We're encouraged to think of our wants, to always, because the people are the ones that are trying to sell us stuff all the time. So we're programmed to be selfish. And to just have, here's the latest watch, or here's the latest iPhone, or here's, dazzle me with the latest. We're like primitive beings, oh yeah, I want one of those now, and it's never ever ending. So we become habituated to servicing our every whim. And that's what curtails our freedom. Transforming the negative into positive. And the other more important thing is to change our attitude. This is what gives us true freedom. Freedom is having the attitude to welcome everything that happens to us, whether it appears to be what we like or what we don't like. It's actually not a thing about positive or negative. I might like ice cream, you don't like ice cream, so for me it's positive, for you it's a negative. There's nothing intrinsically positive or negative about the ice cream. It's like that with everything. There's an old phrase that what one man's meat is another man's poison. Sort of a bit like that, isn't it? I'm thinking of a meat eater and a vegan. So it would be polar opposites, wouldn't it? The other more important thing is to change our attitude. This gives us freedom. Freedom is the attitude that, having the attitude that welcomes everything that happens to it. It is that simple. As human beings, we're alive. Being alive, we're always going to have experiences, whatever they may be. If we welcome everything, then lack of freedom is not an issue. Because we're not, I don't want that, I only want this. If we welcome everything, it's not an issue. Now this is hard. I remember going to town once with Rinpoche, and we were going to the shops, and there was actually Rinpoche and also, what's his name, the artist? Uncle Sherab, yes. And so two older Tibetan lamas, very high lamas, but we're in the middle of Carlisle, and one goes to this shop and one wants to go to that shop, and it was like herding a lot of cats or something. Anyway, but then they said, oh, we're a bit hungry. So well, I knew a nice cafe, I thought we could go to there, but no, we were just going past a McDonald's. And so Rinpoche said we would go in there. I said, oh, Rinpoche, you don't want to go in there. And he said, why? And I said, well, for a start, it's not ethically very good. They cut down the rainforest in Brazil to feed the animals, and then blah, blah, blah. I gave them this whole spiel. And he said, well, I go in there and I like it. So anyway, I had to go in with him, so I'm just sitting there. Well, I'll have a cup of tea then. So, I wouldn't have anything to eat. And they're just tucking into whatever. And I said, what is it you like about it? And he said, well, it's always the same. Like it's, you know what you get. It's always the same. I said, yeah, it's always the same rubbish. And I would stick to my thing. But he was very easy come, easy go, whatever's there, kind of like that. I'm still a bit, I still haven't moved on very far from where I was. About certain things. Okay, I have to own it. So the important thing is that if we change our attitude, it will give us freedom. If we welcome everything, then lack of freedom is not an issue. We are not manufacturing some alternative idyllic universe, but facing the reality of our own with all its joy, with all its sorrow. We develop a mastery over our circumstances, not to be limited by habits of thinking, feeling, and behaving. I mean, it's true, isn't it? Because we get so picky about things, and then if we can't get the exact one that we want, it's like, so you've got to make another journey and go to, in my case, a different coffee shop that's got a different kind of coffee, or whatever it is we have this, we're so picky about. But if we welcome the reality, facing the reality of our own with all its joy and sorrow, that is developing a mastery over our circumstances, not being limited by habits, habitual ways of thinking. And then it goes on to another subheading, which is called, we are not caught in a single script. It's not like there's a pre-designed script for our life story and we can only stick to that script and we have to go follow it page by page. It's not like that. We are our own script writers. I used to be a script writer, so now I have to concentrate on writing my own script, life script. So one way of restoring the balance is to see how everything is like a passing memory or last night's dream. Whatever dream you had last night, whether it was pleasant or unpleasant, it's gone. It's no longer there. And actually, all experiences are like that. You can't be experiencing all that you've ever experienced all at the same time. You would explode. It's not possible. So all of our experiences are like last night's dream. They're gone. The dream or memory is vivid and clear. If it was last night's dream, it's still clear clear to us, it's still vivid, yet each is our own projection. Where did it come from? There's not some place in your head that's like a factory manufacturing, or we buy a dream for tonight, it's not like a TV program or something. It comes from our own projections. We make our own dreams up. We don't have to see them as being solid or real. They arise from our minds, and they can cease to arise from our minds. It's not as if we are caught in a single script. We're not following some single script. We're making it up. We make up our dreams. Nobody's sold us a dream, and then we dream that dream. I'll go and buy some more dreams from the dream shop, and then I'll put one in the slot for tonight. You just dream whatever it is you dream, isn't it? As a result of what's been happening to you and whatever, and how you're dealing with it, or maybe projecting sometimes. Anyway, they arise from our minds, and they can cease to arise from our minds. It's not as if we're caught in a single script, like an audience that's a movie with only one ending. Go and see a movie that starts there, it goes through that, and then it ends like that. The fact is that our projections and evaluations arise from our minds, and we can train ourselves to see them as being less solid, like a dream, like rainbows, and thus break free from rigid patterns of thinking. In other words, we are creating our own life, like we create our own dreams, because of the way we think, our own projections, what we've understood, what we've not understood, where we're at that particular moment in time, how switched on we are, how aware we are, how unaware we are. All of these things together make that dream. Once we're in it, it's very difficult to control it, and also create how we are in our waking life, how we react to things, how we respond to things. So we can train ourselves to see them as being less solid. Whatever's happening to us, we can see it like last night's dream. Because it comes and goes like last night's dream. I'm going to just say that sentence again. The fact is that our projections, which we're constantly making, putting meaning into something, or our take on something, these projections and evaluations, I like this, I don't like that, arise from our minds. Nobody's forcing us. Nobody's cramming our heads with, it's up to us whether we choose. The fact is, we can train ourselves to see all of this as being less solid. It's changeable. It's going to change anyway. How it changes is also up to us. How our next lot of projections are going to be. What the next bit of the movie is. Our life movie, We are the script writers, we're the directors, we're also the actors. So, like rainbows, and so you can break free from rigid patterns of thinking, because it's all changeable. We're not caught in a single script. We can change it up. Suddenly we can go off on a different tangent, can't we? If we want to, we can change our lives radically like that. But where we really need to make the changes is by understanding the mind and how it works. We don't necessarily have to go somewhere. In fact, there's that phrase, you take the weather with you wherever you go. Like you might change the country that you live in or whatever, but the state of your mind is still the same. So we're talking about internal change here. So here's another subheading. Use negative as the ground for learning. use what seems to be negative. In actual fact, I don't know that there is such a thing as positive and negative really, but if we see something as negative or we're receiving it as negative, use that as a ground for learning rather than making an enemy out of whatever it is and being completely closed off to it. See what's the potential here. When the negative confronts us, and of course life is not a bowl of cherries all the time, you get negative situations. When it confronts us, we can learn to appreciate it and think of it as a lesson. Straight away it takes the heat out of it. If we think, oh, this could be useful, it could be a useful lesson, then it's not like you're not taking arms against a sea of troubles and by opposing end them. Thank you, Shakespeare. Fantastic. When we're interested in learning, the negative is no longer so solid because we're seeing it as an opportunity to learn something here. It's as though the heaviness is less heavy. When our attitude is clear and fresh, we don't create further negative waves in our efforts to overcome difficult circumstances. So we're not compounding it by seeing it in a negative way and then making it even more negative, and you're seeing it in an open way, that an opportunity that something could be useful here. I could learn something from this. I could develop from this. So you flipped it. You flipped it from being your enemy to being a potential help, a friend, something that you could learn from, develop from, awaken from, develop your potential from. The way of dealing with challenges is not to fight them, but to see their source as within our minds. Because that's where they are. We define them as being either positive or negative. Good, what I want, what I don't want. But like a child, that I want more chocolate, you wouldn't, they wouldn't give the child all the chocolate because the child wants chocolate all the time, So we're a bit like that. But too much chocolate's no good for you, is it? So we come to understand with our way of dealing with challenges, not to fight them, but to see their source is within our minds. We come to understand how our minds colour the nature of our experience. Because our mind is thinking in a certain way, that will colour how we experience things. The most important thing is to see that within ourselves. Of course, it's easier to see it with other people. Oh, there we can be really, really discerning, can't we? We see, oh, they're really making a big mistake there. But we have to turn it to how we're making a mistake. I look at someone like Donald Trump, and the phrase that comes to mind is like, the classroom bully or something, It's like, and then, how he sees that he wants something. It's like a big baby, like, I want this, I want Greenland. But it is that same thing. It's like this childish, immature way of seeing things. But never mind about Donald Trump. Our work is with ourselves. He's got, I feel very sorry for him because he's way off the mark. But we really have to look at ourselves in that way and see what our weaknesses are, what we go after, what we don't like. And that's how we develop, that's how we get our freedom. Because then we're no longer at the mercy of our wants and likes and dislikes. Maybe not that we eradicate them, but that we understand that we are the author of this. So we come to understand how our minds colour the nature of our experience. That's why when we all could be in the same room having the same experience, but we won't all see it in the same way, will we? we'll have different experiences of it according to how we think of it. So there's a lot to think about here, and there's a lot to work with. We are our own work. And it's not selfish to be our own work, because if we can develop our loving kindness and compassion and good qualities, that is only going to benefit others. Whereas if we persist in our deluded way of being, that is only going to harm others and ourselves. So it's either a lose-lose or a win-win, isn't it? It's not going to be a lose-win sort of thing. Of course, you don't click and then it's all perfect. But at least if we have this kind of way of seeing things, then we're in a position of power. We empower ourselves. Nobody else empowers us. We empower ourselves. Or we give our power to others, or machines, or whatever we want. That's then you cede power to something else. But we take our power, use our power for the good of ourselves and others. Okay, so how do we do that? Right, well, I think at this point we can use this as a reflection, because it is a reflection on freedom, the freedom that comes from deep understanding. When we understand, when we really understand what's happening and how it happens and how our minds colour things, that understanding is freedom. It's not understanding, it's not freedom, is it? You don't know what's going on. But when you understand the mechanism, you can work with it, you can become more free. So, I think that's maybe opened up a sort of way of seeing something. So I think now we can reflect on that. So we're going to just sit and reflect. We've more or less finished this chapter, so now there's some ways of doing this. It's like a method. So you can sit. You could call it meditation or reflection, but you don't have to call it any of those things. It's not like you have to do something weird. Just sit in a good posture. So if you're sitting on the floor or you're sitting on a chair, that's fine. But it's good to have a straight back, because we're now going to go inside. This talking is going to more or less stop, and you're just going to be looking in your own mind. So if you're in a chair, I would recommend bringing your bottom forward a bit so you're not leaning on the back of the chair. So you're supporting your own back. Place your feet flat on the ground so you're solidly sitting, and you're supporting your own back, not leaning back or forward or one side or the other side. Same if you're on the cushion or kneeling. It's important to have a straight back, and also not to be kind of stiff with it. I would recommend keeping your eyes slightly open. If you wear glasses, you might want to take them off, because you're not actually going to be using your glasses. So of course nobody's forced to, and if you do, then maybe put them on the table or somewhere where you don't have to hold them, so your hands are free, in other words. And then just rest the eyes looking down, but it's useful to not completely close them, because if you completely close them, there's a tendency to get sleepy. And we definitely don't want to get sleepy. We want to keep awake. But you don't need, you're not looking all around the room and looking at stuff either. You're just resting the eyes, looking downwards, half open. Okay, so we can become free if we deepen our understanding of the mind. We work towards this freedom by contemplating our attitudes and the way we understand life. Contemplation helps us experience things differently, more in accordance with how they truly are, instead of how we mistakenly assume them to be. So this first reflection can be done in 3 stages. The first is that sound is not solid. When we hear sounds, the mind tends to make them into something solid or real, as though they have some inherent substance. We can change this understanding by reflecting. Sit quietly and simply allow yourself to hear sounds. As you do this, try to hear the sound as though it's an echo, rather than as something solid. Notice how your mind tends to give sounds a significance and substance they don't have. So we'll just sit, and whatever we hear. We don't need to do anything about them. Just reflect. Sounds as like an echo. And the second part of this reflection is to see that thoughts are not solid. Relax and observe your mind at work. Notice how thoughts are coming and going all the time. See how there is a chain of thought that comes from you. It comes and it goes. The thoughts come and go. There is no storeroom where the past thoughts are collected, or any factory making future thoughts. Thoughts just come and go. But you are the one who clings to them, making them valid or not valid. And the third reflection is that things change. Relax and think of all the people and all the animals you have seen. They begin as tiny dots that grow. They grow up, mature, and then their lives end. Nobody evades death. Nobody can avoid growth or change. Pretty can become ugly, small can become big, healthy can become unhealthy. Keep reflecting in this way until you really understand, not just intellectually, but at a deep level of realization of how things truly are, how they really are. Okay, so I use the gong to sort of demarcate that that's the end of the reflection time, but in truth it's only just begun. You know, it's not really a thing that when you're sitting like this and then you reflect and then the rest of the time you don't. That's not how this is going to work. For really making use of it, you have to apply it in your daily life. That's what it's for. It's not just a theory and you all come together and sit, and that's maybe when you're first hearing about this way of understanding, and that's hopefully helpful. But the idea is to take it with you and continue to reflect. That's how we become free. So, now if you would like some homework, you can do this, the reflection that we just did, that sound is not solid, thoughts are not solid, and that everything changes. But there's also a kind of an instruction to practice on changing the mind, changing negative to positive, to take home with you. So we're not going to do this right now, but I'll read through it, and then you can use this. So once you've completed the previous reflection, and that's not to say that you just do it once and that's it, but if you start with that, then you have a foundation. You start to understand how it works. Now, using the same 3 topics that we just did, we'll learn how to change negative into positive. So you begin with the sound. So you understand that it's like an echo, that there's nothing real there. You can't grasp it, you can't do anything with it, it's already gone. But there's another aspect. We think of sounds as good or bad, pleasant or unpleasant. Are these qualities inherent in the sound, or are they created by the way we interpret them? Oh, I like birdsong, I don't like traffic, for example. This includes speech that we may hear, including gossip, insults, praise. Contemplate this until you begin to understand that it is all like an echo. Then you realize it is no longer good or bad, it's just sound. So, somebody praises you, it's just sound. Somebody insults you, it's just sound. Your world isn't going to end and topple or big yourself up. It's just sound. And I think this is really important, especially if you happen to go on social, or what I call anti-social media. I don't go on it because I think it's toxic, and I know that there's a good side and that's how they hook you in, but I'm actually not attracted to it and I don't want to become it, and I see the harm that it does. You know, I'm not saying it doesn't have a positive side. Obviously that's how it's got to have some good, or what we like, and then definitely what we don't like and how people suffer through that. So, you know, just that's one of its iterations in today's life, modern life. So you just realize it's no longer good or bad, it's just sound. Secondly, we reflect on thought. We reflected on thought. They come and go, and the mind does not remain in place, it comes and goes. So if there's a bad thought, it eventually goes. You can't have bad thoughts all the time. The same is with good thoughts. You cannot have good thoughts all the time. There's bad and good. And they're constantly changing. And once you realize this, you free yourselves from the tendency to get stuck with the idea that bad thoughts or feelings are always there. Similarly, you are more free to see the good thoughts as they arise and realize that you have the good coming through as well. So it's changeable, and we are the ones that judge things to be good or bad, what we like, what we don't like. Finally, you reflected on how everything changes in life for everybody. This helps us understand that life is a process of change for all of us. And once again, this realization is liberating. It frees us from the unrealistic ideas, like, for example, always wanting to look the same age. I mean, this is very prevalent now. There's a whole industries of Botox and surgery and God knows what, of course, appearances. We want to look the same age. So when we realize this, we become more acceptable, more able to accept change. And we come to terms with growing old and looking different to how we looked 5 years ago or 10 years ago. It would be unrealistic to look like the child we were when we were 5 or 10 or 15 or whatever. We become more able to accept that change happens. And everybody grows old and looks somewhat different to they looked the years before. So those are the three things. I added on a thing in pencil I've written here. What is the alternative is stasis. Not changing, not moving, stuck. Dead, actually, because you have to grow and change, isn't it? There's nothing wrong with that. I think being stuck is far worse. You'd just be like, stuck. So, rather have the change and the growth. Like the seasons grow, you know. You don't say, to the tree, you don't look nice anymore without your leaves. So you just see a different way of seeing the tree, isn't it? Anyway, that's for you to reflect on. I'm going to shut up now. So let's finish off by dedicating the merit of our practice. So if you get the sheet with the prayers on. Oh, by this merit may I obtain omniscience, defeat the enemy wrongdoing, and so free all beings from the ocean of samsara, with its stormy waves of birth, aging, sickness, and death. Okay. Et voila. So there's a lot to reflect on, isn't there? So this, as you may have noticed, we've been filming this session. So you can always go online. It'll probably take a week or two before it's actually on our YouTube channel, but it will be on there, and then you can use that. Or you can get the book, and then you've got a reminder, and it's a great book to have. We do have copies. And maybe some of you have been taking a few notes. So either way, that last reflection is pretty simple. It was just 3 fairly simple things to reflect on, and you can apply that as you're walking along the street, and if something annoys you or you like something, you can subject it to the same kind of reflection. It's not only about sitting meditating or sitting whatever you want to call it. When things are happening, it takes the sting out of stuff. You start to see things in a more realistic way. That's a great benefit. So thank you for coming, and see you next time.